I'm Cindy, and my life used to feel like a picture-perfect postcard. Suburban house, a garden I barely tend to, and a marriage that's weathered 8 years of storms. But beneath the surface, there's a hollow ache, a creeping distance between me and Mark, the man I swore to love forever. Last night, under the pulsing neon lights of a downtown club, everything I thought I knew started to unravel. A stranger's gaze lingered too long. A forbidden moment sparked something dangerous, and now I'm standing on the edge of a secret that could shatter everything I've built. What did I do in that fleeting, reckless instant? And will it destroy the life I've fought to hold together? Picture this, a quiet evening, the kind where the world seems to hush itself just for you, and I'm standing at my kitchen window, watching the last sliver of sunlight bleed into the horizon. There's a glass of cheap Merlot in my hand, the kind that tastes more like regret than grapes, and I'm lost in the kind of thoughts that creep up when you've got too much time to think. My name's Cindy, and at 36, I've carved out a life that looks pretty on the outside. Neat little house in the suburbs, a garden I pretend to care about, and a marriage that's ticked past 8 years. My husband, Mark, is 39, a man who's always been steady, like the kind of rock you lean on without noticing until it's gone. He's got this quiet strength, a way of filling a room without saying much, and I've loved him for it since the day we met at a friend's backyard barbecue, both of us awkward with paper plates and too much barbecue sauce on our fingers. But standing here, with the wine warming in my grip, I can't shake the feeling that something's been slipping through my fingers. Not Mark, not exactly, but the us we used to be. 8 years is a long time to build a life together, to stack up memories like bricks in a wall, vacations to the coast where we'd tangle ourselves in salty sheets, late-night talks over takeout when we'd dream about everything we'd do someday, the way he'd pull me close in the dark and whisper things that made my heart race. Those moments, they're still there, buried under the mundane, under the bills and the schedules and the way we sometimes pass each other like ships in the night. I catch myself wondering if he feels it too, this quiet drift, or if I'm just imagining the distance in his eyes when he comes home late from work, smelling of engine oil and exhaustion. I take a sip of the wine, wincing at the bitter edge, and let my gaze wander to the photo on the fridge, a snapshot from our 5th anniversary, both of us grinning like idiots on a rented boat, the lake behind us shimmering like it held all our secrets. We look happy there, unbreakable, and I remember how that night ended. The two of us alone, under a blanket of stars, losing ourselves in each other in ways I can't say out loud, but you can probably guess. It was the kind of closeness that felt like it could stop time, the kind you don't question. But now, as I trace the edge of the photo with my thumb, I wonder when we last felt that raw, unspoken connection. Was it months ago? A year? Time has a way of blurring the edges, doesn't it? Mark's still at work tonight, probably hunched over some project that's got him swearing under his breath, and I'm here, stirring a pot of pasta that's more for distraction than hunger. The house is too quiet without him, just the hum of the fridge cutting through the silence like a low, persistent whisper. But that quiet didn't last long. Later that night, after Mark got home, we decided to shake off the weight of the week and head out. It wasn't something we did often anymore, but there was this unspoken agreement between us, a need to reclaim a piece of who we used to be. So, we ended up at a nightclub downtown, the kind of place where the bass thumps so hard it feels like it's rewriting your heartbeat. Stepping inside, the energy hit me like a wave. The dance floor was a sea of bodies, all pressed close, moving in sync to the relentless beat. The air was thick with the scent of sweat and sweet cocktails, a mix that's both intoxicating and a little overwhelming. Neon lights flashed overhead, painting everyone in shades of electric blue and hot pink, and for a moment, I felt like I could lose myself in it all. Mark was right beside me, his hand brushing mine as we wove through the crowd, and when he looked at me with that familiar half-smile, I felt a flicker of our old spark. We started dancing, our bodies finding a rhythm together, and I let myself believe, just for a little while, that we were back to those carefree nights from years ago. His laugh cut through the noise, warm and real, and I clung to it, letting it pull me closer to him as we moved under the pulsing lights. But that feeling didn't hold. It never does for long these days. After a few songs, Mark's attention shifted. I saw him glance toward the bar, and I knew what was coming before he even said it. He mumbled something about grabbing a drink and squeezed my hand before heading off. I stayed on the dance floor for a bit, trying to keep the high of the moment, but my eyes kept drifting to him. First, it was a beer, nothing unusual, then a whiskey, downed a little too fast. Before I knew it, he was tossing back shots with a group of loud, rowdy guys I'd never seen before, laughing too hard at jokes I couldn't hear. I watched his shoulders slump, his steps get uneven, and that old familiar frustration started clawing at me. I've seen this before, too many times. Mark losing himself in the bottom of a glass, turning into someone I barely recognize. His words started to slur as I got closer, checking on him, and he stumbled over nothing, catching himself on the bar with a clumsy grin that didn't reach his eyes. My chest tightened. I wanted to drag him out of there, to shake him until he remembered who he was supposed to be, but I knew it wouldn't do any good. Not tonight. I needed air, or at least the closest thing to it in a place like this. I wandered toward the edge of the dance floor, where the crowd thinned out a little, and leaned against a sticky high-top table, trying to steady my breathing. The music was still pounding, vibrating through the soles of my feet, but my mind was elsewhere, tangled up in the mess of emotions watching Mark unravel had stirred in me. That's when I felt a presence beside me, a shadow cutting through the strobe lights. I turned, and there was Ethan, one of the guys Mark had been drinking with at the bar. I'd noticed him earlier, not just because he stood out with that easy confidence, but because his eyes had lingered on me a little too long when Mark introduced us in passing. Now, here he was, offering a small, knowing smile, like he could see right through the frustration I was trying to hide. He didn't say much at first, just asked if I was okay, his voice low and steady against the chaos of the club. I nodded, brushing it off, but he stayed, and somehow his quiet company felt like a lifeline in that moment. Time slipped by, and eventually, I knew we couldn't stay. Mark was a mess, barely able to stand, let alone walk straight. Ethan offered to help get him out of there, and I didn't argue. Together, we half-dragged, half-carried Mark through the crowd, his dead weight pulling at my arms as we pushed through the sweaty bodies toward the exit. The cool night air hit my face like a slap when we finally stumbled outside, sharp and sobering after the suffocating heat of the club. My hair stuck to the back of my neck, damp with sweat, and I took a deep breath, trying to shake off the haze. We flagged down a taxi, the yellow cab pulling up with a screech of tires, and I opened the door, helping Ethan maneuver Mark into the back seat. He slumped against the window, mumbling nonsense under his breath, his head lolling to the side like a broken doll. I slid in next to him, and Ethan climbed in on my other side, his knee brushing against mine as the cab lurched forward into the quiet streets. The ride was suffocating in its silence. The driver didn't bother with small talk, just kept his eyes on the road, the hum of the engine filling the void. Mark's incoherent muttering faded into soft, uneven breaths, and I stared out the window, watching the city lights blur past, my mind racing. Ethan's presence beside me felt heavier than it should have. Every time the cab hit a bump, his leg pressed against mine, a fleeting contact that sent an unexpected jolt through me. I stole a glance at him, catching the way the streetlights carved shadows across his jaw, and I hated myself for noticing. Guilt gnawed at me, sharp and relentless. Mark was right there, oblivious, and yet I couldn't stop wondering what Ethan was thinking, what that quiet intensity in his eyes meant. Was he just being kind? Or was there something else behind his willingness to stick around? I pushed the thought away, but it lingered, curling like smoke in the back of my mind. When we finally pulled up to our apartment building, the relief of being home was overshadowed by the daunting task of getting Mark upstairs. Our unit is on the 3rd floor, and the elevator's been out of order for weeks. I sighed, already dreading the climb, but Ethan didn't hesitate. He insisted on helping, and before I could protest, he hoisted Mark over his shoulder with a kind of effortless strength that caught me off guard. I watched, almost mesmerized, as his muscles tensed under his shirt, carrying Mark like he weighed nothing. I followed behind, holding the door open, my heart pounding for reasons I didn't want to name. The stairwell echoed with our footsteps, the dim fluorescent lights flickering overhead, casting long, uneven shadows on the cracked walls. By the time we reached the apartment, I was out of breath, more from the tension than the climb. Inside, we laid Mark down on the couch in the living room. He didn't even stir, just collapsed into the cushions, his snoring filling the room almost instantly, loud and ragged. I stood there for a moment, staring at him, a mix of exhaustion and frustration washing over me. Ethan straightened up beside me, wiping a bead of sweat from his brow, and I felt the weight of his gaze before I even turned to meet his eyes. There was something there, a flicker of unspoken understanding, and for a moment the air between us felt charged, like the quiet before a storm. My heart was still racing from the climb, or at least that's what I told myself, as I muttered a quick thanks for his help. But Ethan didn't move right away. He just stood there, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from him, his breath steady while mine felt caught in my throat. And then, before I could step back or find a reason to break the tension, he leaned in, his lips finding mine in a moment that felt both inevitable and completely wrong. It was quick, almost desperate, a collision of need and recklessness that left the taste of him lingering on me, sharp and forbidden, like a secret I couldn't swallow down. The second we pulled apart, a wave of quiet guilt crashed over me, heavy and cold, dousing whatever heat had sparked in that stolen instant. I could still feel the ghost of his touch, the way it had ignited something I hadn't felt in so long, but now it was buried under a suffocating weight of shame. I turned away, my hands trembling as I fumbled for words, anything to fill the silence that pressed down on us. I stammered something about it being late, that he should probably head out, my voice sounding hollow even to my own ears. Ethan didn't argue, but he didn't rush to leave either. His eyes stayed on mine, searching, probing, like he was waiting for me to say something more, to admit what we both knew had just shifted between us. I couldn't meet his gaze for long. It felt like looking into a mirror that showed too much of what I was trying to hide. Showing him to the door was a clumsy, awkward dance. My steps felt too loud on the hardwood, each one echoing like a confession in the stillness of the apartment. I kept my eyes on the floor, on the scuffed edges of the rug, anywhere but on him, as I mumbled another weak thank you. My heart was a drum in my chest, pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. And every few seconds, I stole a glance toward the couch where Mark lay sprawled, oblivious to the betrayal that had unfolded just feet away. His snoring hadn't faltered, a rough, uneven rhythm that somehow made the guilt cut deeper, like a reminder of how much trust I'd just shattered. I opened the door for Ethan, the cool night air slipping in like a whisper, and he paused in the threshold, turning back with a look I couldn't read. He said goodnight, his voice low, almost tender, and then he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him with a finality that made my stomach twist. I stood there for a long moment, my hand still on the knob, staring at the wood grain as if it held answers I didn't have the courage to find. The silence of the apartment wrapped around me again, broken only by Mark's heavy breathing from the living room. I forced myself to move, to lock the door, to turn off the lights, each small action feeling like a way to bury what had just happened. But when I finally climbed into bed, sleep was a distant stranger. I lay there, the sheets cool against my skin, staring at the ceiling as shadows danced across it from the streetlights outside. My mind wouldn't stop replaying every second of that moment with Ethan, the way his hand had brushed my cheek just before, the intensity in his eyes, the rush of something wild and untamed that had surged through me. It was a thrill I hadn't known I was craving, a dangerous kind of high that came with a bitter aftertaste. And then there was the guilt, gnawing at me, relentless, whispering that I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. I'd risked everything, my marriage, my stability, the life I'd built with Mark, for a fleeting spark that might burn it all down. I tossed and turned, the clock on the nightstand ticking past midnight, then 1, then 2. Every creak of the house felt like an accusation. Every memory of Mark's smile, a knife twisting deeper. The morning after that night at the club, I'm sitting at our small kitchen table, the wood scratched and worn from years of hurried meals and unspoken arguments. The air feels heavy, like it's pressing down on my chest, thick with a tension I can't shake. Mark is across from me, his elbows on the table, rubbing his temples with slow, deliberate movements, as if he's trying to push away a headache, or maybe something worse. His face is pale, shadows under his eyes deeper than usual, and I can smell the faint staleness of last night's alcohol still clinging to him. I grip my coffee mug, the ceramic warm against my palms, but it does nothing to steady the storm inside me. I've barely slept, my mind a tangled mess of guilt and dread, and now, sitting here, I feel like I'm waiting for a bomb to drop. He finally looks up, his gaze meeting mine, and there's something raw in his expression, something that makes my stomach twist. His voice comes out low, almost a whisper, but every word lands like a punch. I woke up briefly last night, Cindy. I saw you. With that guy. I saw everything. The room seems to shrink around me, the walls closing in as my breath catches in my throat. My face burns, a hot flush of shame spreading from my cheeks down to my neck. And for a moment, I can't even form a thought. He saw. He knows. The secret I thought was mine to bury. The fleeting, reckless moment with Ethan that I've been replaying in my head with equal parts longing and regret. It's not a secret anymore. My hands tremble around the mug, and I set it down before I spill it, my mind racing for something to say, anything to fill the suffocating silence. But before I can find words, a wave of defensiveness surges through me, sharp and bitter, like bile rising in my throat. I lean forward, my voice shaking but growing louder with every word. This is on you, Mark. You got so drunk last night you couldn't even stand. You've been neglecting us, neglecting me, for years. I've felt invisible in this marriage, like I don't even exist to you anymore. Do you know what that does to someone? Do you even care? The accusations spill out, each one a brick in a wall I'm building between us, and I can't stop. I'm not just angry at him, I'm angry at myself, at the choices I've made, at the mess we've become. But it's easier to point the finger, to let the hurt I've carried for so long turn into venom. Mark doesn't fight back. He just sits there, staring at me with hollow eyes, his hands dropping to the table, fingers splayed like he's bracing himself. There's no fire in him, no argument, no defense. Just this empty, wounded look that cuts deeper than any shouting match ever could. It fuels my anger even more, the way he won't even try to meet me halfway, the way he's just there, absorbing my words like they're nothing. I want him to yell, to push back, to show me there's something left to fight for. But he doesn't. And in that silence, I feel a twisted kind of relief creeping in, cold and unsettling. It's out now. No more hiding, no more pretending. The truth is a jagged thing, sitting between us on this scratched-up table. And there's a strange freedom in that, even if it's laced with pain. But that relief is quickly drowned by a crushing weight, a realization that slams into me with brutal clarity. There's no going back from this. Whatever fragile threads were still holding us together, I've just severed them with my own hands. My chest tightens, and I can feel the heat behind my eyes, the thread of tears I refuse to let fall. I push my chair back, the legs scraping against the floor with a harsh, grating sound that mirrors the chaos inside me. I stand up, my movements jerky, and grab my purse from the counter, the leather strap rough against my palm. My voice cracks as I turn to him, the words barely holding together as I mutter, "I can't do this right now, Mark. I need space." My voice trembles, hanging in the air like a fragile thread about to snap. I don't wait for him to respond. Don't even look back to see the expression on his face. I just turn and walk out, the door slamming behind me with a hollow thud that echoes in my chest. The morning air outside is crisp, biting at my skin as I hurry down the sidewalk, my purse swinging against my hip. My mind is a storm, a chaotic swirl of anger, guilt, and something else. Something reckless that I can't quite name yet. I know where I'm going before I even admit it to myself. I pull out my phone, my fingers shaky as I scroll to Ethan's number. I hesitate for just a second, my thumb hovering over the call button, but then I press it. The decision made in a heartbeat. Hours later, I'm sitting across from Ethan at a small diner just a few blocks from my old life, the kind of place with sticky vinyl seats and a jukebox that hasn't worked in years. The smell of greasy fries and burnt coffee lingers in the air, and the fluorescent lights overhead cast a harsh, unforgiving glow on everything. Ethan's already there when I walk in, leaning back in the booth with that same easy confidence I noticed the first time I saw him. He greets me with a knowing smile, a subtle curve of his lips that makes my stomach flip in a way I'm not proud of. It's like he expected me to show up, like he knew I'd come running after the mess I've made. I slide into the seat opposite him, my hands fidgeting with the edge of a laminated menu I don't intend to read. There's a weight in the air between us, an unspoken acknowledgement of what's already happened, and what might still unfold. I don't hold back. The words pour out of me like a dam breaking, raw and unfiltered. I tell him about the fight with Mark, how the truth came crashing down around us this morning, how I accused him of pushing me away for years. I confess that I walked out, that I've decided to leave, to step away from the life I've known for so long. My voice cracks as I admit I have no idea what the future holds, that I'm standing on the edge of something I can't see the bottom of. Ethan listens, his eyes steady on mine, not interrupting, just taking it all in with a quiet intensity that makes me feel both exposed and oddly safe. When I finally run out of words, there's a long pause, the clatter of dishes and muffled conversations from other tables filling the void. Then he leans forward, his voice low and sure, and offers me a place to stay at his loft downtown. "No pressure," he says, "just a roof over my head until I figure things out." I don't know if it's kindness or something more, but I nod. The decision, feeling like another step down a path I can't turn back from. Within days, I've moved in. My belongings are packed into cardboard boxes, stacked haphazardly against the sleek, minimalist furniture in Ethan's loft. The space is all sharp lines and open windows, industrial and cold in a way that feels like a stark contrast to the cluttered warmth of the home I left behind. The city sprawls out below us, a maze of lights and noise that feels both thrilling and overwhelming. I'm still unpacking, still trying to find a place for my things among his, when I catch myself staring at the boxes, wondering how I got here so fast. It's a whirlwind, a blur of choices made in the heat of the moment. And while there's an undeniable pull between Ethan and me, a fire that ignites every time our eyes meet or our hands brush, there are cracks in the foundation of this new reality. Late at night, when the loft is quiet and the city hums outside, I lie awake on the unfamiliar bed, doubts creeping in like shadows. Have I thrown away a stable life, a marriage that, despite its flaws, was built on years of shared history, for something that might flicker out? As don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you,